our country. Whether you like it or not, whether people like it or not, in Bimini today, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent. The same thing can happen in San Salvador, in Exuma. It's going to happen now. It's not going to happen 5 years from today. I need $150 million to build airports to meet the standards that's going to happen, because the hotel man down there who got 400 or 500 rooms, he wants 200 immediately, addition. And other groups. And so the question for us is this: how do we take advantage of the science that's available to us, of the people who would wish to be investors, and how do we integrate our medical fraternity into that as owners or participants in the investment? Because it would not make sense to me for you just to be scientists in the employ of these people coming in. That some of you have to see, and we, the government, must help you see it and effect the connection to be major participants in the establishment in our country of these entities. That's how it's going to make sense, and that's how the country will guarantee protecting itself against what I was concerned about initially, your participation in this going forward. So let's see where we are. We passed the stem cells legislation. We passed the regulations. We have invited scientists of repute, some of whom are here, some of whom have been connecting, to help us give legitimacy to the jurisdiction. And this is important because we want people of the world to see that this is going to be not just the Bahamas looking for medical tourism, but the Bahamas engaged in a high level of research where people like Kobe Bryant flies to Germany, right, for the assistance from a German doctor on the kind that he would be able to fly to the Bahamas for. Where one of my legal friends took his wife to Germany, and he says on the first injection for her back that she had a chronic problem with, no more problems. I don't know the truth of the science. These are people who speak to it. In Okeanos, the first group of patients who came through in Freeport, they're certifying almost miraculously the therapies that are being used. I'm the father of an autistic child. I don't need to be speculative as to whether or not there exists research being done to help children like Adam or young men like Adam. But for the first time, the research that we're talking about, the interventions that we're talking about, Bahamians will have access to those treatments. That's the condition upon which people must be licensed. So there is this opportunity to feel very good about what we're doing. This opportunity to know that when you spend $60 million on a critical care unit, that's a lot of money. And when I sit down and I see that when we're making contributions to trade unions, we're spending over $100 million a year on health insurance payments, who is it who's going to tell me it doesn't make sense for me to examine whether or not there is a model suited to the Bahamas to give maximum protection to people in this country, however incrementally we start? There is no model for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in this hemisphere as an island nation. When we brought Stan Reed down here, someone had the good sense to do it. When I sat with an ophthalmologist who happened to be the dean of the medical school at Yale University almost 30 years ago, he came after his operation, and I said, why can't I have coverage? We had no ophthalmologists on the staff. I was Minister of Health. So over these 30 years, today, as a result of an intervention I made, we have residents at the Princess Margaret Hospital. When I went to Hopkins and I was sick and I had this insult, as they call it. That's what they call it. All right? And I went up there. I talked to the fraternity up there because I happen to believe in the qualifications of our doctors, in the security of them, that in a borderless world when it comes to medicine that you can control, and where the Bahamas could have access to the brightest and the best. That's what I believe in. And this is where we are, and this is how I want to conclude. We are going ahead in 2016 with universal health care. We're working on the predicate that our economy will be able to make it happen. I thought I would have demonstrated already to the business circles out there on the question of that, where they knew and I knew if we do not put a taxation in place, the country would be downgraded and we'll be in the same kind of position some of our sister countries are in. I have no choice. But I said what I will do is make it easy, 7.5%. And I will reduce duties on 100 items. And between now and February, I may do more. And between February and June, more still, to the point where prices are balanced out. But we do it, listen to me, we do it in concert with the business community. We don't do it as an imposition on them. We are prepared with the medical fraternity to work out what is best for the country with you as major participants as opposed to the enemies. So when Dr. Francis appeared before the cabinet, I felt good about it. I felt good about it. To see a young Bahamian articulate positions on behalf of the fraternity and speaking futuristically. I didn't know him, but he made me feel good. He made me feel positive. Well, what has to happen, and this is why we're going to need your help. As we engage in stem cells, I told the professor, the French professor who came down here as a consultant to review what Sanagest, the consultants, are doing. I told him I'm working from the predicate that if you're poor and you're black and you get sick with a certain disease, you die. I'm talking to you all medical people now. This is what I said, the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, with all of the, so to speak, health experts in the room. If you are poor and you're black, you cannot buy your environment, you cannot buy your insurance, you cannot buy anything. You die. And that's when I said, let me tell you a story. I stopped at Sidney Poitier's house a couple of days ago on the way from China. He's fragile now. And he told us a story about what we as young black people should think of. He said his mother was pregnant in Miami and her water bag burst. She didn't expect to have him, but somebody intervened to take her to a place where she could have him. Came home, grew up, and went to work as a dishwasher in New York. And someone saw him reading, or what appeared to be reading, and they asked him, "What you reading?" And he told them he couldn't read. He said, this was a white Jewish fella. And the fella says, "I'm going to help you read. I'm going to teach you how to read. We're going to stay behind. I'm a waiter, you're a dishwasher. I'm going to stay behind and teach you." Sidney Poitier then started to cry. Just now. Sitting there, a group of young Bahamians and myself and others. And he says, but for the intervention of that man, he said, look at me. I've won 2 Oscars. I've won Best Director, Best Producer. I have written books, but I couldn't read. And someone decided they're going to help me. And you know what he said? There are, in the underclass in the Bahamas, there are many people like Sidney Poitier, but they need an opportunity. They need someone to reach down and say, let me help you. Now, this is the philosophical undergirding behind a commitment to help people with health care. But we know we have to change the whole complex. How do you do that with Princess Margaret Hospital configured as it is, and give people 4 patients to a room, and to do it where they have a sense that I'm paying for something that I'm getting? We have to do it together. And we will set a standard in the region for others to follow, demonstrating from a private, public sector, professional, public, private, that we can do these things. I believe that. And so to those of you who have come in and who are here from abroad to assist us with this, I know that in years to come, the ethics committee will be made up of Bahamian scientists. I know that you will be a source of inspiration to young scientists we have now who will be shoulder to shoulder with you. And I know that people will want to come to the Bahamas in numbers, whether they're Indian companies, American companies, they will want to come. But I do know that it would only last if our jurisdiction is respected. And so for me, this is a wonderful defining moment in the health and medical regime of our country. I asked Dr. Nodish and Dr. Gomez whether any of you were coming out tonight, whether I was coming to talk to a round table of 10 people or 20. I'm happy to see those of you who have come out. I want you to truly know that there are big things to happen in this country, but it has to be in furtherance of your own dreams, your own aspirations, your own belief that these things can take place. That the country is going to be a richer country than it is now. That you have to come to understand that some of the world's leading corporate persons, leading people in the arts, leading people in music, leading people live in the Bahamas. And that the secret is, how do we better cause them to be connected to the country, to give more to the country? I believe in the next 18 months that we're going to have substantial development in the country. I believe all this talk about unemployment is going to be impacted in 6, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, when thousands of people are employed. One of the things we dealt with in China, there's Melia flew there in his aircraft to China, and we met with the construction company chairman and leadership and the China Export-Import Bank and the Chinese government, and we agreed March 27th. So to those of you who deal with private patients, thousands of people will come to be employed out here in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks as they begin to crank up. Life at Key is going to expand. Albany continues to expand. Tonight on the way here, the number 2 at Baker's Bay told me that they need to come to the government because they have $300 million worth of construction that they can't get to for Baker's Bay, for people who want to live in the Abacos, and therefore they're going to want us to give them special permission to bring in some work permit people, and they'll hire another 300, 400 Abaconians, that I should get the letter in the next 48 hours. it's the kind of feeling that people have about this country. And as I think of the magic of the country, I'm thinking of all these destinations that will be created, with doctors having to find a way to have private sector connections of other doctors in their employ in different islands in our country. Things are happening for you. And so I therefore confess that they wrote this wonderful speech for me, and I didn't read it. I'm sure in Parliament or someplace I'm going to have another occasion to familiarize myself with it and read it. But I wanted to come up here and speak to you about something that is so meaningful to this country. I mean, really meaningful for this country. And, you know, I see the representatives of the Chinese embassy here, the charge d'affaires, etc. Let me just say this. You know, you sit with the leaders of their companies, and I was sitting talking about their flying and why they should fly, that they financed $3.5 billion. This is the largest hotel resort development in the Western Hemisphere right now, going on at Bahamas, and they're buying the Hilton. So the lady who's in charge of Jingjiang company said, we've just bought a company with 160 hotels in France and one United States of America with 180 hotels. I said, yes, ma'am. And what I want you to do is develop West End. See, you know, this whole aspect of who should own what. The richest Chinese in the world has been an investor in the Bahamas from the minute he built the container port. The container port in Grand Bahama is owned by the richest Chinese in the world. And this whole thing about today's world is entirely different. And we in the Bahamas must know that we have this opportunity that we have to take advantage of, because today the press asked me, would you think of 30% unemployment with young people? Would you think of 25% unemployment with young people? What I think is, it shouldn't be like that. And that is for us to do something about it. So gentlemen, the government of the Bahamas has passed legislation to bring you here. I expect you to spend your money, to build the facilities. In your case, it's going to be a stem cell bank. I expect to bank my stem cells. I expect to bank my grandchild's stem cells. And I expect to use my stem cells. I expect for you to come back and add 20 years on my life. All right? Lord help me, I don't want to frighten brave Davis, brave, you know, because these fellas want me out of politics now, you see? So, look here. Hey? Huh? No, I don't want to do this. So, yesterday, I got to leave right now. Yesterday, a young lady walked up to me in the presence of some of my political colleagues, and she was about 7 years old. So I said, and she wanted to meet the Prime Minister. I said, are you going to vote for me? And so the woman said, Christy, you can be there that long? so you have to be careful you're talking. But Dr. Gomez, thank you very much for the opportunity you've given me to speak to the medical fraternity and those who are connected here. I think we're going to have a very exciting time in the country. And I'm so happy that you've been able to have some of our guests who have volunteered to help us from Minnesota, from New York, as I see it, and others who are on the telecast or the talking by telephone. I'm so happy that you've approved 5, but let me just leave you with this. There is a process. The Minister of Investments is sitting next to you. You do the scientific. We do the fit and proper to invest in the Bahamas test. And that test together makes approval. So I just want you all, when you all get up here talking about you all approve, you and your chief medical officer, just remember the Bahamas has this interdisciplinary approach by investments and health. You do the scientific, they do the business. The cabinet says yes, and then everybody could go and do business. That's the process, all right? And so what I would like to think is that in the next couple of days, a recommendation will be made by the Ministry of Health with respect to 5 enterprises that would wish to do business in the Bahamas. We are absolutely delighted that this is an indication of what's going to happen, and we look forward to their coming to the Bahamas. Robin, it's good to see you.